Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to another edition of our Real Church, Real Talk, Real Church. Forgive me, I'm all over the place, which is actually a blessing in and of itself with the message in which direction I'm going. However, first and foremost, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Minister Javier Rivera. Uh, on behalf of Pastor Lemuel Eaton, First Lady Carolyn Eaton, and the whole LLWC family, thank you again for joining us today at this time. Um, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of get right into it. Um, it's it's funny how when you're going to go through a situation, whatever it is, um, a feeling of anxiety or a feeling of discomfort, even so much as just all out excitement, sadness, whatever the case may be. The emotions will go up, down, left, right, and they tend to overwhelm the overall person inside, and they end up governing how you act as well as react to what's going on. And it it's hard to explain sometimes that you need to take a beat, stop, and remind yourself your emotions can't be the ones to overtake not only who you are but what you do. You know, when you come across a situation that uh, normally would anger a person or frustrate a person, myself, I'm speaking to you as well as praying that I'm ministering to myself as well. Um, it's again overwhelming to the point that you know you have things coming at you in every different direction. The bills, the finances, oh, there's issues with the car, or there's issues with the house, or my cousin's sister's brother's uncle's dog just swallowed a squeaky toy. Now we got to take it to the vet. There could be so many situations that will lead to an emotional response, and because of that can cause you to really step outside of your character. When I mean to step outside of your character, I mean step outside of your faith, and to the point that you allow yourself to then question your faith. And sometimes you got to stop. And the reason why I mention that is because it's hard to recognize sometimes when you're not being led spiritually the difference between feelings and faith. Because you're letting your feelings overrun the situation, or shall I say, like I said, the action and or reaction of said situation, you tend to forget your faith. And I think the best way to describe it, actually, what really hit me was um, the reference scripture I mentioned here in Hebrews 11 and 1. And I'm going to read both the King James as well as the Amplified Classic. In the King James, it's literally a sentence. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Simple, plain, to the point, but doesn't really hit. However, the Amplified Classic version kind of expounds a little more on that, where it says, now faith, notice in big, bold letters, is the assurance, the confirmation, the title deed of the things we hope for, being the proof of things we do not see, and the conviction of their reality. Faith perceiving as real fact what is not revealed to the senses. The reason why it hits so hard on the Amplified Classic version, because again, it goes to what I'm explaining: the emotions, your feelings, how you tend to let them override your thought processes, which allow to take a moment, steal your mind, and remind yourself of your faith. You know, that last portion right there, faith perceiving as real fact what is not revealed to the senses, meaning you were so engulfed by your senses you didn't realize that the faith you have here by God, that you were taught to just stop for a moment, think, take a beat, like I mentioned before, and either decide how you're going to react, whether you're going to react with your emotions or you're going to take it into faith to know, I'm just going to leave it alone and move onward, or I'm going to give it to God. That is the best way to put it, because you have to have an outlet, and of course you've heard it in various formats. You know, you need to talk to someone, or hey, why don't you go to a counselor, or why don't you get counseling, or why don't you do this? And you know what? That's all fine and great. You need someone for that accountability to not only remind yourself of how you may have reacted or acted emotionally, however, to remind you of the faith that you have within you, that God will allow you to persevere whatever situation I mentioned in the beginning. You know, the bills coming down, the cars having issues, the dog swallowed a squeaky toy, so now I got to go to the vet, or the house is falling apart. There's so many different ways that we let our emotions take over and forget to remind ourselves to take, like I said, take a minute and really correct, or should I say correctly, interact, act, or react to said situation. And that's not to say you need to bury emotions. You need to stop. No, because emotions are needed. You need to feel, you need to understand, you need to empathize. I mean, you have every right to understand the emotional response. However, it is the matter of how you, I guess, outwardly express your emotional response. Not so much outwardly express what's on your mind because of the emotional response, because you might end up saying something that you can't take back, or worse, you might end up saying something that'll put you in a situation which, again, you can't take back. You know, and that brings back to how, growing up in earlier years. I won't go back to details, but a real term that stuck out, which is what the title of the message is. Do you feel me? Whenever you have a conversation and you're politicking with someone, you're going back and forth, and you're having a good conversation, you're feeling good. However, the faith in you understands the energy in that other person. It's a dialogue amongst each other. It's not meant to solicit an emotional response. It's not meant to anger. It's not meant to, create a form of negative energy, or even, anything that's going to create that, thickness that just makes it difficult to communicate with one another. And, you always ended up with that question at the end of the conversation. You feel me? Do you feel me? You know, and that's what it is. Do you feel the emotions? Yes, you do. However, how you respond, how you interact, how you bring forth said response or reaction to the situation determines where that conversation is going to go. And not just that, where you're going to go spiritually, because that energy will stay with you. That energy will just grow. And if it's a bad energy, a negative energy, because you emotionally reacted in a negative, harsh way, it's going to fester, and it's going to then start to overpower your level of faith. Because people don't realize the faith level never changes. It's up to you to determine how much emotion is going to overlap said faith. If your faith is strong enough and your faith is rooted deeply enough, there's not an amount of emotion that will create any situation that will allow you to question your own faith, or even someone else to question your faith or the faith in you. And I was reminded of one of the earlier stories of, and I'm going to of course reference when Jesus went to visit uh, forgive me on this one, I'm drawing a blank, which is one of the many things, my head was all over the place. When he went to visit Mary, and you know she was quick to try to have the house in order, and everything in order, and then I would think it was her sister. My apologies, her cousin. And Mary was at Jesus' feet, pleading and not realizing, she was getting upset that Mary was getting all the attention and letting her emotions overpower how she felt about Mary, rather than just stop for a minute and just go toward the conversation. You were so worried about everything in the house getting right, and the dishes being clean and preparing the best meal. And the man was right there who just wanted a conversation with you. That's all it was. He wasn't expecting you to bring out, your best china dishes, or, rock the biggest feast impossible. No, just wanted to have a conversation, just to see what's going on. How are you? How's everything going? How's the situation, at this moment? And it brought me over to Psalm 34:4. You don't have to follow along, but I read it, and it hit again. Amplified Classic just hits that much more, explosively, at least in my mind, where it says, "I sought, inquired of the Lord, and required Him of necessity, and on the authority of His word, and He heard me and delivered me from all my fears. They looked to Him and were radiant. Their faces shall never blush for shame or be confused." He was talking about David when he pretended to be insane. And if you notice where they sought and required, they stopped with their emotional response, took a minute and realized their faith, and looked to God and realized, then were calm. They understood. They smiled. They had no worries to blush or be ashamed. And people in general, and I'm not, going into full deep thought about it. I mean, in the essence of people just allow their emotions to try to not try. They allow their emotions to almost replace their faith, and it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way at all. Faith should be first and foremost above all, because if you have your faith, you have your character, you have your solid ground, your foothold on God, then your faith will never be shaken. Your faith will never be rocked. Your faith will never even be questioned. So long as you don't allow your emotional response to then have your faith come into question. Again, do you feel me? That's pretty much the gist of it, how it breaks down. Do you feel where I'm coming from? Do you feel what I'm saying? Do you feel how I emote what I'm currently trying to transpose from my mind to my mouth to my words to say to you how I feel? Because again, it's the expression of it. And it brings me also to a conversation I had earlier today. Someone went into a shop and they had a discussion with a shop owner. They were trying to purchase a product, and unfortunately, the product was not name brand. It was a offset, or as we call, a fake. One of the off brand. Instead of Nike, they got Mikey, and they questioned the shop owners, like, listen, do you have any other brands? Because this one's fake. And the shop owner, within a second, fired off very harsh, very brashfully, saying, words I won't repeat here, but in other words, get out of my store if you don't like what I have. None of my stuff is phony, this, that, and the third. And the person who was questioning the product, rather than allow their emotional response to come off as a proud man, I grew up and I don't get disrespect, none of that, rather than start going at it and continuing this cycle of emotional conversation, just thought to themselves as, well, I'm not going to respond to that in that fashion. You have a nice day, and just left. And that's where, again, your faith comes into question. He could have easily responded emotionally, angrily, and just started a whole other, whole other situation that would have escalated to something that didn't have to be done. However, faith within his own self and his own peace of mind was what led him to walk out and just, okay, you have a blessed day. Thank you very much, and left. And that's what really comes into question is, do you feel me? Do you understand that if you allow your emotional response to overpower your faith, then what's left? What's truly left in the end when you break it down? So with that being said, I pray that you understand your emotions, which are allowed. The question is, are you going to allow them to determine how you are not only looked upon, but how you are representing yourself as your character? Okay? That's the biggest thing of it all. I pray that this word has not only enlightened and empowered, but enriched your spirit. I pray that it ministered to you because, as I mentioned before, I minister to myself in this process because I myself have to, remind myself, it's tough. It is tough. Whether it's, like I said, finances or even, you know, loss of a loved one. Um, you want to be angry. You want to be frustrated. You want to question faith, and you have to stop and remind yourself to give it to God and know that your faith is in good hands. Your faith is in the power of the Almighty. Your faith is without question. Your faith is what you can lean on when God is the first and foremost response. Again, I'm Minister Javier Rivera of the Lamb and Lion Worship Center, giving all honor, glory, and praise to God for this message, praying it reached someone, or at least in some way, like I said, enriched your spirit. Feel free to join us every Sunday morning, 10 a.m., either in-person service at 111 East 25th Street in Norfolk, Virginia, or you're welcome to view us online here on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and as always, all the information is down below here. You need to reach out in prayer. Feel free to reach out to our game changers. They are on the ball when it comes to what you need to get done. You reach out in prayer, they will be at the throne of mercy asking God for you in your place to his presence. If you feel you want to reach out to us in other forms of fashion, you can email us at prayers@LLWC.net. You can if you want to give, reach us at Cash App, # LLWC, Givelify, LLWC, and of course, always remember and never forget, the Lamb and Lion Worship Center is where ignorance stops and the truth begins. God bless you.